Welcome back, everyone. Today we are back with a super exciting interview with actually here. So I'll just explain her quick story here. So not only has she went from zero to I think she's at $300,000 at this point in less than 2 years. I think a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken. And on top of that, we just so happen to be related. She is my cousin, so we'll see if any embarrassing stories pop out. But in any case, I forgot to mention. So here we have her full name. Well, I know her as Kati, but I'll go ahead and send it back to her. So, Kati, if you could just let us know uh, your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. So my name, I kind of go by Kat Del Carmen. That's kind of my stage business name. But the real name is Catalina del Carmen Maldonado. But I
Gotcha.
go by Kat. You could find me everywhere, Kat Del Carmen. I am a business coach. I support mainly women of color to grow their businesses to their first six figures and help them just feel really good in their marketing and feel comfortable and authentic selling. I think a lot of people, at least in my community, but I think generally, if you're not comfortable selling, it could be so uncomfortable. I mean, it could be so cheesy and like just like very sleazy. That's the word that a lot of people think of, and I kind of help debunk that with my clients. So that's what I do. I'm also a podcaster. Latinas Booked Out, that is the podcast name. So yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention in the intro, not only does she have a solid podcast, Instagram, all types of great content going, but we'll talk more about that in just a second. So I know you already just touched on it a little bit, but I like to start with my main question that I ask everybody,
Yeah.
which is who do you help to do what, and how did you come upon that?
Yeah, that's a good question. The how did you come upon that? Because a lot of people get stuck on that part exactly. Okay, so I support women of color, coaches mainly. So I actually coach coaches, I coach some consultants and a few entrepreneurs. But mainly I'm speaking to women of color coaches and I'm helping them grow to their first six figures. And fun fact is that at the different parts of my journey, like before I made six figures myself, I literally just I helped women of color. Actually, I don't know if I was helping women of color at that point, but I helped women make their first sell their first four-figure client. That's kind of like what I used to that used to be like my promise. And then after that, it was your first five figures, and then it turned into first six figures. So I'm kind of like chugging people along with me as I grow. Um, but that is who I serve, and how I came upon that is so I start. Can I give a little background on how I started my business, or are you going to ask
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
I'll,
please
I'll make
do.
it quick. So I started my business as a podcaster, and I started a podcast after trying YouTube, after trying a blog, both I just never got consistent at, not even like a little consistent. Like I think I did a couple times each. And I just felt like everything wasn't working. And I decided to do a podcast very last minute and just decided to commit to it for 1 year and just see where it took me. And during that year, I started getting requests for coaching. Actually, I listened to someone else's podcast and they said, if you want to get your first client, just tell people on your podcast that you're opening a spot for coaching and to email you. So I did that like just because. And like months later, I got an email and that's kind of how it started. But when I started coaching, I didn't really know what my niche was. And I literally hopped from a podcast coach to a personal brand coach to what led me to even business coaching was that I had a group program, one of my first group program, and I realized that everybody who joined, which I think it was like six people, they all had interests in being a coach. And based off of that alone, I decided to put a webinar together. It was December, actually, this time frame of 2020. Yeah, 2020. And I put together a webinar called How to Become a Coach. It was very simple. And it was literally based off of, these people also are interested in coaching. Like, let me just tell them what I know. By the way, at that time, it had been like 4 months of me coaching, but I was like, let me just tell them what I know so far. And that got the best. Like, I think like 20 people signed up and like, I don't know, 10 people came or something like that. And I got I got 2 one-on-one clients from that webinar alone. And I decided, okay, like, let me just go heavy on this business coach. And what it evolved into is everybody just wanted to learn more about becoming a coach. And then I realized like everybody reaching out to me wants to be a coach, just literally everybody. So then I decided to switch it to coaches. I played around with influencers, and then I landed on women of color because it's like why I started my business in the first place is because I used to listen to a whole bunch of like very popular digital marketing leaders like Amy Porterfield and Jenna Kutcher, and I love their content, but I kept thinking like the women in my life would have no interest in learning from business from these women, like just straight up. And I was like, I should be like this voice to like at least share the information. So my entire podcast was about it, learning from them, implementing, and then sharing what I learned. And that was it. And then that turned into coaching business. Coaching business turned into helping women of color and helping coaches. And once I did that, my business really shifted and it started doing really well. So I've stuck with that.
Nice. You let the market speak, you put your twist on it, you experimented with different ideas and saw what stuck.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Which by the way, can I just add, it
Yeah.
really sucks when you are like jumping from niche to niche because it feels like you're publicly failing and it feels like people are going to think A, B, and C about you. And it's like, who's going to work with you if you switch your niche every time? And like the search for looking for your niche, it's gonna, at least from my experience, like you have to be willing to feel the like embarrassment or whatever feeling comes up, which is so funny because I have this behind me. But you have to be willing to kind of go through those motions to get to like what is the thing that works. So, anyways.
No, I feel you, and of course, feel free to jump in. We're here to listen to you talk, not me necessarily. But and I will add another little note is that notice how she pretty much started at the beginning of COVID. So
Yes.
I know a lot of people say, oh, it's a down economy. Oh, people won't buy in my niche, in my market, my type of customer, this, or that. Well, COVID is a good example. Everyone says, oh, no, COVID, everything is bad. Now it's not a good time. Well, here is a perfect example of someone who jumped right in and pretty much came up entirely and did well throughout what some people might consider the worst time to do it. So, speaking of which, what was your experience with COVID and pretty much starting and pretty much growing throughout that entire period?
Yeah. So I started my business I'm sorry, my podcast right before COVID. So it worked out well because I started in December and then by the end of February, like, COVID hit for real and we were all freaking out. I think for me, it helped me in a couple ways. Building my business through the pandemic, especially like the height, I should say, of the pandemic. Here's how it supported me. One, it helped me have a lot more time on my hands, not from a place of like I have all this free time, but from a place of like I don't have to drive to the grocery store and do, I mean, I guess I was a little bit, but like these little tidbits of time that like I had, I I got back. That being said, what I didn't mention here is at that time I also had a 7-month old. My son, who's now 3, was about 7 months when the pandemic hit. So a couple things happened. One, I really had to start looking at my life, and it kind of forced me to decide, when am I going to work on my business and when am I not going to work on my business. So it helped me create boundaries in my life so I can like find time to work on my business, communicate it with my husband, and just make sure, like, it forced me to get serious about my business, because it was either that or I don't know, I just hate my life in this pandemic. So it helped me create boundaries so I could really work on my business and have this time. Secondly, I really did desire community, and I let my social platform be my community. Like, I started thinking about social in such a different way. I stopped thinking about it from this place of like, this is a business. I need to market my business. I need to market my podcast. Although I was aware of that, I started thinking about it of like, I needed to just I like having community. I'm just going to like be friendly, and I'm going to be social on social media. How about that? Boom, right? Like, who thinks like I should be social on social media? And that, like, just that energy alone, it it helped me not be so attached to the result that I wanted so deeply, which was for my business to grow. And instead, I was just like, you know what? Like, it's fucking pandemic. Excuse me. Sorry. I don't know if we're
It's all
allowed to
good.
this. It's a pandemic. I really miss community. I'm going to make this be my community, and I'm just going to like build my community and help them and serve them. And yeah, one thing led to another. And, I'll say during this time, I met a really good friend of mine. Her name's Erica Cruz. She's also a coach. And we met online. Like, I just liked her Instagram. I think we both had curly hair. And I DM'd her after we like just were a little bit social. And I was like, hey, it looks like you're building something. I'm building something too. Would you be down to get on a Zoom and just like talk business, like where we're at in our journeys? And we did. And we ended up growing a friendship that really supported each other in like growing our business, putting out our first offers. We even quit our jobs in like the same month, which is kind of wild. We didn't plan it like that. Yeah, I ended up quitting my job to go all into my business. I say all in, but I was also a full-time mom when I went all in. And yeah, so like, I don't know. Here's what I think would have been different if there wasn't the pandemic. I think I probably would have went on to be very comfortable in my very cushy job, and I probably would have been faced with all the benefits of having a good career more often. And because of the pandemic and having to be home, it was just a reality to me that like, okay, like I I can actually create anything I want. Like, why don't I try to leave my job? Which I still think is wild, and I don't recommend. We did not have a solid plan. I did not have like a whole year worth of salary. Like, I'm very what's the word, risk adverse, or is that the opposite? I have a high risk tolerance, and I like to exercise that. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah.
Yeah, no, you mentioned so many good points there. I don't even know where to start. Like, number one, you mentioned, yeah, starting with that, with the constraints, is that like, of course, it doesn't always work for everybody, but a lot of people do mention that constraints actually help them, that like they're glad they, I don't know, lost their job, or I know that sounds negative,
No, no,
but
no,
yeah,
but
like, let's just
it's
say,
true.
yeah,
Like,
constraints
yeah.
help a lot of, in a lot of cases. But you also mentioned, um, like posting on social
Mhm.
media, even like at the beginning, you mentioned committing to the process instead of the results. You message somebody who, could have said no. And that seems so simple, just DMing somebody, but
I and
most
I
people
felt
aren't
really
willing to do
stupid
that.
doing it. I remember I was like, "Hey, what's up, girl?" But it turned out she is such a good friend and colleague of mine now, and her business has boomed too. So I feel really lucky that like I'm glad I did that, and I continue to build even more friendships now.
Yeah, and just continuing on that is that like one of my favorite phrases that I like to tell people is give luck a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to put yourself out there, meet
Mm-hmm.
people, DM people, and most importantly, be willing to hear the word no, or to hear crickets on your
Yeah.
post, or to have your launch have zero sales or whatever. I don't want to say fail, but like be willing to put yourself
Mm-hmm.
out there, meet people, mix it up. Because for better or worse, a lot of people aren't willing to
Yeah.
do
No,
that.
100%. How did you start that? You said something luck.
Give luck a chance.
Give luck a chance. I love that. Like it is like you're giving luck the chance. Like just at least give yourself the chance to get lucky, right? Like that's the least you can do, right? If you want your business to grow, if you want to close another sale, like the least you can do is put yourself in a position to get a no.
Exactly. I always, yeah. I pretty much totally agree because it's possible to succeed sitting locked in your room all day every day,
Mm-hmm.
which some people that works
Yeah.
for, but in most cases it makes more sense. Oh, and another thing that I totally forgot to mention, I don't know how, is that she did all of this with a newborn baby. That is a gigantic deal. I can't believe I forgot to mention that. And as a side note, she does have another one and is still
Yeah.
going strong. So major
Now I
major
have
props.
a 2 month old and a 3 year old, and learning how to scale my business in these circumstances, which now I have like more support, right, than I did before. But even with the support, there's still like the mental factor. It's still like, I still have 2 children that I'm thinking about it behind, in the back of my head. So
Yeah, and I
yeah,
can't emphasize how cool that is and how much I respect I have. Well, for everything you've done, let alone like in,
thank you.
I literally can't even imagine.
I don't want you
But
to.
let's, yeah, yeah, one day, I guess. I always tell people I have a dog that's totally the same thing. So yeah. But let's go back to you were talking about content and how you got started and
Hmm.
stuff like that. So what I know you mentioned your podcast and Instagram and stuff like that. What is, I'm not sure if it's the same now as it used to be. What is your main traffic channel? So how do people first hear about you? What are the biggest one or two
Yeah, so
channels?
I use Instagram. Instagram is where most people find me. I and they typically find me through collaborations, through re shareable content. Um and honestly, like I'm around the community. Like because I serve women of color, I've built such a big community of women of color who I also lean on, and we kind of all just like support each other, um and have grown these communities. So Instagram is where most people find me. My podcast is, I think, some of my most valuable content. It is my my podcast is the place where people grow trust in working with me. That's the place where they get results before they work with me. It's the place that I really pour into. And this is why I really love long form content. And I'm just such a big believer in long form content, even though I know short form content is like the thing and important. I just think the reason here's the thing. I don't know who said this. I'm sure you've heard it before because you're a marketing like whiz, but I someone told this to me and I've stuck with it is podcast or Instagram, right? Short form content places, networks, whatever. They will help you grow a wider audience, but a podcast and long-term content will help you go deeper with the audience that you have. And I always took that, like wherever I heard that once, I always took that and I was just like, yeah, that is where they're going to trust me. So like I've always practiced being super authentic in my podcast because that's where people grow trust in me. That's where they decide. Like I like to believe that's where they decide to work with me. Those are my main channels. And then I have email that I also, I also nurture that audience as well. But I would say it's like my third, yeah, like the third one. And I think that does similar work to my podcast.
So given Instagram is pretty much the top of your funnel or where most people find you, and yes, I do agree with you about the what is it, breadth versus
Yeah.
depth, different channels. But I always like to ask this to people about their main traffic channel. What would you do if Instagram actually she can tell you she can
Yeah.
tell you a little funny story about this, but what would you do? Different scenario here. What would you do if Instagram disappeared tomorrow? The government said, we don't like you, you're shut down, boom. What would you do there?
Okay, well, first fun fact,
You mentioned the little story.
My Instagram just recently got disabled for 2 full weeks. And I did contemplate like, what the hell am I going to do if I don't get this back? I did get it back. Here's what I would do, or I should say, here's what I did do. Because I started strategizing when that happened. I was like, okay, Kat, like first, I do a lot of mindset work with my clients and I practice a lot of mindset work so step one, if Instagram did that, the first thing I would do is manage my mind and my mindset, because the first thing I would want to do just intuitively is to panic and to really like desperately get into this desperate energy and try to solve a whole bunch of things based off my emotions. And that's not how you want to play in business. So the first thing I would do is take a step back and really manage all the thoughts that you're having and validate them for yourself. Okay, I'm panicking. This is normal. This is what any person who's in my scenario would probably also panic. Let me give myself a second just to feel this, to feel like even like sad or whatever. That's like number one. Number two, I just decided, because I have a launch coming up. It happened like during like when I was prepping for pre-launch. So the second thing I was thinking is, okay, I have to double down on my 2 other channels that I focus on, which is email and my podcast. So I started thinking of like different ways. And I was like, all right, well, on my podcast, I could start doing a second episode a month and they could be super short, like 10-minute tidbits or even 5, or even like just a couple minutes. Like, how fun would that be if I just did something really different to serve people in a shorter form? Because that's what would be missing. Like in my head, I'm like, okay, if Instagram's gone, short form is gone for me. So I have to figure out how to solve for that. So I just started brainstorming and like I could send that. My emails, I could also do an additional email. I mean, my emails I don't really have together. They're not like perfectly sent on like the right day at the right time, like my podcast.
No
but
TikTok, huh?
No, I'm so you I'm actually I decided intentionally to not use TikTok since the beginning of my business. And this is when everybody was on TikTok and I had so much FOMO. But for people who know my business, they know that I practice simplicity in my business and I actually practice not being on all the platforms, at least not all at once. And I really coach my clients on like, pick your lanes and get great at them. And then you can add one to the mix. Although I do love TikTok. Don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of TikTok. TikTok can do so much for your business. It's just not the game I play. But yeah, I would do that. And then I would probably hop on another channel. Like I probably would hop on TikTok or, yeah, probably TikTok. Or you know what I would do is start repurposing my emails. Actually, I just started doing this because I got disabled. I started repurposing my emails on LinkedIn. And now I'm like, on LinkedIn. I have someone on my team posting regularly now on LinkedIn. So that's kind of what came from my Instagram being disabled. Yeah, I think that's what I would do. And then I probably would grow my TikTok.
Nice. No, like we mentioned earlier, sudden restrictions can be a big benefit. Then you
Yeah.
have to experiment, try new things, think differently, for better or
Yeah.
worse, I guess. And you mentioned your account getting disabled. I know that's more minor, let's say, but let's go to your whole story. What were some of the biggest obstacles that got in your way? Like things that slowed you down, things that yeah, let's just say, what are some of the biggest obstacles that got in your way to getting where you are now?
The biggest obstacles that got in my way, let's see, for the last, I mean, people are going to hate this answer, but I really do feel like what has always gotten in my way, like the big one was my mindset. Like that is always going for me. It's what I teach. It's how, I help my clients. Like your mindset will make or break you. And I have this quote right behind me. It says, be willing to feel any feeling. And what that means is a lot of, I think, the way we all grew up. I'm a business major. I think you're a business. Oh no, you're like a media, right? Like
Yeah.
literally. um, so I'm a business major, and I just feel like when I think about business, I think about it being done a certain way and that it has to be this certain way. And as a woman in business, something that I've always gotten in my career is that I'm emotional, or that I'm this way, or that I'm that, like I'm too much, or whatever the case is. And when I was growing my business, I had to really be willing to carry a lot of emotions and not make decisions from that place, and just let it be okay for emotions to arise. Let me give you an example. So, for example, if you what are the main, like, your audience, what are you thinking, like one-on-ones? Like, can I talk about one-on-ones?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like an example. So, for example, if you are a coach or consultant, even, and you're trying to sell your services and you sell them with sales calls, or selling them with some type of cold consultation, in the beginning of my business, like I really made sales calls the like I had to pitch myself and like really show all the amazing things about why I'm the perfect person. And because that was my intention, the energy in my mind, like my thoughts about it was like, I need them to see my value, which I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, yeah, of course you want them to see your value. But like for me, in that energy is such a hard place to sell from, because, at least for me, because it doesn't feel authentic. So when I would, for example, get a no, I would make a no mean something about me. And when I think a no mean, like if you get a no and you make it feel it, you make yourself think that it means something about you and your business, it's going to be debilitating. Like it's going to hurt your feelings. And there's a quote that I heard from Britt Castillo of the Life Coach School. She says, you cannot out hustle your self-doubt. Our bodies are immediately going to go to hustle when we get scared that we're going to get more rejection, or we get more self-doubt. We're going to want to do more and more and more and more. And that's because that's literally how we've seen business done by a lot of folks. And I'm not here to say not to hustle. I think there's wonderful seasons of hustle. But if you can't get your emotions in order, and it's coming from this very desperate place, and if you're not getting the results that you want, then you need to work on your mindset. And I was able to really shift my thinking at the beginning of my business. And I really just started stop letting my business mean something about me. So I know I gave this like really huge answer. But one of the biggest challenges was my mind, and really working harder when I had more self-doubt. And that is not a winning combo. When you have self-doubt, you need to recognize that it's self-doubt. And I want you to, one, validate it, let yourself feel it. Then I want you to be like, okay, this has nothing to do with my business. My business is a whole other entity, and I get to just think about it strategically and differently, like away from me. So if I knew exactly what I was doing, what would I do in this situation? Just having that kind of mind has helped me grow my business. And I'll can I mention one more thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Another challenge for me was going from 100K to 200K and raising my prices from 6,000 to 10,000. I was coached on this, and after making it six figures, I really wanted to do a group program, and I got coached really hard to stick with one-on-one and to raise my prices to 10K. And I raising my prices really, and this is just me personally, this might not be a problem you guys have, but for me, it made me feel, it made me feel just very greedy and like, very like this is too much money, because I don't work with businesses who have lots of money. Like I work with women who are just starting their business. And I had a lot of thoughts about charging 10K, and also thoughts about how I need to scale my business. And I'll tell you this about scaling and raising your prices and all of that. People who scale their business also don't know what they're doing. So if your favorite coach or influencer, let's say they have sold, and I'm thinking business, I'm just sticking to business here, but let's say like my favorite coach or whatever has sold 500K. Actually, I'm going to give you a real example. My real coach, she did 10 million last year, right? And she shared with us in coaching that she's like, you guys, do you know I have no idea how I'm going to get to 30 million? I don't know who she is yet. Like, I don't know how that version of me is yet. I don't know exactly how to get to 30 million. I know how to run a $10 million business, but I don't know yet what it's going to take. I'm going to have to dive in. I'm going to just throw some spaghetti at the wall and figure it out. And it was so comforting to me, because it's like, yeah, we don't get to just know what we're doing all the time. And when you do get there, it's likely time to scale. And then it's like you jump right back into the freaking pool. And you have to learn how to do it again. So that was a big, big, big challenge for my mind, and just for me to accept that, like, damn, I thought this was a destination that, like, oh, I know what I'm doing now. And this is a destination and we're good. Nope. Like, you're just going to have to learn over and over and over again.
No, that's a really good point that when it comes to growing in anything, you're going to be in a different place, a different position.
Make different
And
decisions.
yeah, be be a different person, have a different
Yes.
mindset. Yeah, pretty much all of that. All right. So as we're wrapping up here, this is a question I get a ton, which is when somebody wants to start a new business, especially like a regular solopreneur or single person, let's say, everybody says, or that I've heard at least says, should I start a coaching business or an agency business? And in some ways they're connected. Let's say you start as a coach. Then people, like, if you tell somebody, hey, you should be on social media, a lot of clients will say, oh, great. Do you do that? And then that's where the agency comes in. Or you say, oh, you should run Facebook ads. Oh, you should do blah, blah, blah. And then the next logical question is, oh, can you help me with that? Do you do that? So what are your thoughts on that? Have people come to you with that question when you give them a suggestion? Or just what advice do you have for somebody torn between those two directions?
Yeah, I think so. Here's the thing. I love one-on-one coaching because it is very simple money. Like, literally, you could just meet someone on the street at Target or something. And if you pop up on a conversation, and let's say you're a health coach and they're like, I've been, I've been wanting to get these last 10 pounds off, la, 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 la. Like you could just be like, oh my God, I could totally help you. I'm a coach. I'm a health coach. I could literally help you with those last 10 pounds. Like, why don't we get on a call and like, see if this makes sense for you? Right. Once that happens and they decide to work with you, even the behind the scenes is simple. Like you could literally just, it's so simple. Okay. So I think when you're deciding between coaching and agency, I think what looking at your skill sets is probably the best first place to look. Like, do you know how to manage a lot of things? Are you really good with administrative work? Are you very skilled in XYZ? For example, if you are an agency, like you need to have high skill in whatever you're selling, or know a lot, right? Like know a lot about what you're selling. And then for coaching, you also need to know that, but you also need, I think coaching involves a little bit more, personal development tools, let's just say, to help people develop as a human, right? Like when you're coaching someone, you have to be fine with where they are at in their journey. Like as a coach, we deeply desire for our clients to get all of the results, but some people just aren't in that phase. They aren't in the phase of their growth where they're ready for those results. And you as a coach have to be willing to accept that and not make it mean something about you or not make it mean something about them. Like everybody's in their own stage and pace of growth. So that is important in a coaching business. In an agency, it's all about deliverables and it's not like personal. Like you have to be able to deliver when you said you could deliver, and it doesn't there's less emotion involved, I think. And if you're good with administrative work, if you have a skill set when it comes to managing a lot of tasks and using specific tools, right? Like Asana and like all these tools that are helpful for that. I think then, yeah, like, I mean, agency, I think can also make you a lot of money, like really quick. If you're good at selling. But I think looking at your skill sets and what feels better to you, I think you should debate that when you're choosing between both. Like I know I couldn't start off with an agency because I have way too much like ADHD brain and I cannot like I'm a hot mess, and growing my one-on-one coaching business, it let me be a hot mess behind the scenes because it was so simple. Like I didn't have lots of like hard deliverables.
Yeah, and of course, I totally believe that everything works. Some people
Yeah,
say this is better, start here, and it definitely depends on the person. Like
it
there's
does
no,
all work.
yeah, and there's no like one size fits all, like everybody should do this or this first. So yeah, so
Exactly.
good points there either way. Well, I know we are almost out of time, so we breaks my heart a little bit, but I guess that means we will probably have a part 2 of this at some point in the future. So definitely keep an eye out for that. But before we finish here, of course, definitely can you let us know what are you working on now? I know you mentioned a launch. So what projects do you have going on right now, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah. So you can find me on my podcast. It's called Latinas Booked Out. And yes, you can listen to it, even if you're not Latina or a woman of color. Anyone can listen to it. And I mainly hang out on Instagram at Cat Del Carmen, CatDelCarmen. Let's see. Right now, I only sell one offer. I'm about to sell two actually. So I work with my clients one-on-one, and I'm launching the second cohort of my mastermind. It's called Show Up and Lead. It's designed to help women of color coaches, consultants grow to their first six figures. Next year, I have a very ambitious goal of 500,000, which I think is a little crazy. Like I do.
Good,
But like, why the fuck not? Excuse my language. Like,
good, good.
why not? So that is my goal. If you want to be a part of that journey and see like what that looks like, feel free to follow me. But that is my goal. And I plan to put out a second offer next year. And yeah, along with my mastermind and then doing some one-on-ones. I'll probably scale back on the one-on-ones eventually. That's what I'm doing.
Nice. And of course, all of these links will be in the description below. So no matter what, like she said, color or whatever, then definitely check that out. Follow her, listen to it, subscribe, all that good stuff. Buy what she has. You definitely, plenty of people have done it and they're all happy. So clearly she knows what she's doing. Cool. Well, perfect. Well, like I said, we are definitely going to have to do a part 2 at some point in the future. This was great. And, next time we'll have a little bit more time flexibility here. But any last sign off notes here, by the way?
Be willing to feel any feelings. If you ever feel like if there's ever a goal that's ahead of you, or if you feel a negative emotion, if someone says no on a sales call, if you put on a webinar and nobody showed up, like, or even you are selling a coaching package and you said there would be 15 spots and 50 people want to join and you have to say no to some people. I just want you to know that like growing your business will require you to have a capacity for a lot of emotions. And it doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. It's just what happens in business. So be willing to feel the feelings. And thank you so much for having me. Next time, maybe I'll have my shit together and my background and lighting will be as beautiful as yours.
Literally all I have is a microphone and a webcam and my lights.
That background though, so you guys, I have seen this background in real life. It's really nice. It looks like a fake one. That's how nice it is.
Well, thanks. I'll keep a secret about where I get my set. Nah, just kidding. I got these.
You've like literally read all those books, huh?
Not all of them, but a decent amount. Now I've kind of switched to Kindle, so now I don't know why I have all these paper ones, but I like them both.
Yeah,
I like them both.
It's a nice background.
Yeah. Oh well, thanks either way. I'll take a compliment where I can get it. But anyway, so of course, thanks for coming out, sharing all those huge, valuable golden, platinum, diamond nuggets here. We'll have to do this again, and I'll see you at the next something family party, I guess.
See you later.